Hello everyone, welcome back to Mathematics Lifeline. This is my 1000 subscriber special, and I wanted to do an entire ACT test to commemorate this. I do a lot of questions that are similar to ACT questions, or even that are ACT questions. But I want to do a whole test because I think it's important to go all the way through it. But I just wanted to say thank you all so much for 1000 subscribers. It's only been like a little over 2 months since I've started this, at least full time. So I can't thank you all enough for the growth. But yeah, that's all I wanted to say. Without further ado, let's start the ACT test. Thank you all so much. Okay, so here's the first question on the ACT test. It says Shannon walked 1 2/3 miles on Wednesday and 2 3/5 miles on Thursday. What was the total distance in miles that Shannon walked? Now, of course, question one of the ACT is always pretty simple. So we're asking for the total distance in miles. So we need to add 1 2/3 plus 2 3/5. So the way I like to do this is first we're going to split up the 1 and the 2. So this is equal to 1 plus 2 plus, then we have the fractions. 2/3 plus 3/5. We know this right here is 3. So now we just need to worry about what is 2/3 plus 3/5. Now, because we're doing the ACT, I'm not going to write the whole thing out, but just know that we're going to use what's known as the butterfly trick here. So we're going to do the cross, add those, and then multiply these to get the common denominator. So here we have 10 plus 9 is 19 over 15, which is equal to 1 4/15. So we have 3 plus the addition of these, which when we add this is 1 4/15. So this is 4 4/15. So our answer for this first question is going to be option C. So let's move on to question 2. Okay, so for here we have question 2. It says 4x cubed times 3xy squared times 2xy squared is equivalent to which one of these? So we have A, 9x cubed y to the fourth, B, 9x to the fifth y to the fourth, C, 24x cubed y to the fourth, D, 24x to the fifth y to the fourth, or E, 24x to the fifth y to the sixth. So now this is just properties of exponents. So let's do it like this. We have 4, let's just rewrite it. 4x cubed, and we're going to multiply that by 3xy squared. We're going to multiply that by 2xy squared. So here, we're going to go ahead and just start by multiplying all the constants. So we have 4 times 3 times 2. 4 times 3 is 12, times 2 is 24. So that's going to be the first part of our answer, which tells us already that A and B are gone. Now let's multiply all the x terms. So we have x cubed times x to the first times x. Well, that is going to be x to the fifth. And we did that by multiplying exponents, which is the same as adding the powers. So now we're going to multiply the y terms. We see there's no y term in this one, but there are 2 y squareds here. Y squared times y squared is y to the fourth. So that tells us right there that our answer is going to be D. Now, what I do want to point out about this question is a lot of times on these standardized tests, there are going to be answers that are obviously wrong. So when we see that we have 4 times 3 times 2 is 24, even if you forget the exponent rules, you can already rule out A and B because they don't have the 24. So that makes your guessing a lot easier if you have to guess. But yep, that's it for question 2. Let's go on to question 3. Okay, so here we have question 3. It says, Mr. Wilk is a high school math teacher whose salary is $33,660 for this school year, which has 180 days. If he takes a day off without pay and a substitute comes in to teach for $85, how much less does the school district have to pay? A, $57, B, $85, C, $102, D, $114, or E, $187. So we know that for the day that Mr. Wilk takes off, they're paying out $85 to the substitute. So we need to figure out how much Mr. Wilk makes per day in order to figure out how much they're actually saving. So to do that, we're going to divide 33,660, divide that by 180. So when we get this, we're going to end up finding out that he gets paid $187 per day. So Mr. Wilk per day gets paid $187. And the school district is only paying $85. So we want to subtract off $85 because we want to figure out how much the school district is saving. So 187 minus 85 is equal to $102. So the school district is saving C, $102 for that day. So let's move on to question number 4. Okay, so here's question 4. It says a student has earned the following scores out of 100 this year: 63, 72, 88, and 91 on 100-point tests. What must the student earn on the final 100-point test to have an average test score of 80 points? So is it A, 79, B, 86, C, 89, D, 94, or E, the student cannot possibly average an 80? So we know that the average test score is going to be 80 points, and there's 5 tests. So we know that the average test will be adding up all the scores. So adding up test 1 plus test 2 plus test 3 plus test 4 plus test 5. And we're going to divide that by 5 to get the average. And we want that to equal 80. So to solve for what the sum of the test score should be, we're going to multiply both sides by 5. So that tells us that test 1 plus test 2 plus test 3 plus test 4 plus test 5 should be equal to 80 times 5, which is 400. So if that's the case, then we know that the sum of the test scores should be equal to 400. And we know the first 4 test scores. So we have 63 plus 72 plus 88 plus 91 plus test 5 needs to equal 400. So let's go ahead and add all of these up. Well, 63 plus 72 is 135 plus 88 is equal to 223. 223 plus 91, and that is equal to 223 plus 91 is going to be 314. Sorry, that took me a second. 314. So 314 plus test 5 needs to be equal to 400. So let's subtract 314 over to this side. So test 5 is equal to 400 minus 314, which is equal to 86. So the test 5 score needs to be B, 86 out of 100 points. All right, so let's move on to question number 5. Okay, so here we have question 5. It says the oxygen saturation of a lake is found by dividing the amount of dissolved oxygen the water currently has by the dissolved oxygen capacity per liter of water, and then converting that to a percentage. If the lake currently has 6.4 milligrams of dissolved oxygen per liter, and the capacity is 9.5 milligrams per liter, what is the oxygen saturation to the nearest percent? Okay, so this is a pretty long-looking question, but it's really not that hard. The only thing it's asking us to do is to divide the amount that it currently has by the capacity. And we know it currently has 6.4 milligrams, and the capacity is 9.5. So all we need to do is compute 6.4 and divide that by 9.5. And when you do this, you roughly get 0.674. So now that we have this, to convert it to a percentage, all we have to do is multiply by 100. So let's multiply this by 100. This is equal to 67.4%. And it says to the nearest percentage, and the nearest percentage is 67%. So our answer to this question is going to be B, 67%. So let's go ahead and move on to question number 6. Okay, so here we have question 6 of the ACT. It says a rectangular lot that measures 125 feet by 185 feet is completely fenced. What is the length in feet of the fence? So we know that if it's a rectangle, we know that 2 sides are 125 feet and 2 sides are 185 feet. And the fence is the entire length of the perimeter of the rectangle. So remember, to find the perimeter, we just need to add the sides. So the perimeter, or the length of the fence, is equal to 125 plus 125 plus 185 plus 185. This right here is 250 plus 185 and 185 is 370. 250 plus 370 is equal to 620. So the perimeter of the rectangular lot, or the length of the fence, is 620 feet. Let's go ahead and move on to question number 7. Okay, so here we have question number 7. It says the expression A times the quantity B minus C plus D is equivalent to which one of these? Is it AB plus AC plus AD? Is it B, AB minus AC plus D? Is it C, AB minus AC plus AD? DAB minus C plus D, or EA minus C plus D. This might look like a lot, but this is really just PEMDAS. I mean, remember we do the brackets or the parentheses first, and then exponents, which we don't have, and then we're going to do multiplication and then addition and subtraction. So let's go ahead and just rewrite everything. So we have A, and then the bracket, quantity B minus C plus D. B minus C would be the first thing that we would do, but we can't simplify anything here. So all we need to worry about is just the entire bracket. And we look at the whole bracket and nothing can be simplified. So we're going to distribute the A. Now, the first thing we want to do to make this a little easier is let's get rid of the brackets and change them into parentheses. And the way we're going to do that is just by noticing that nothing is going to change here if we remove these parentheses. So we have A times, and then we have B minus C plus D. Now when we distribute, the A goes to every term. So we have AB minus A times C plus A times D. And we see that the only one that this matches is option C. So that is how you can simplify that expression just by using the distributive property. So let's go ahead and move on to question number 8. Okay, so here's question 8. It says if 6x minus 3 equals negative 5x plus 7, then x is equal to what? So this is just a simple case of moving terms to one side and then solving for x. So let's rewrite it down here. We have 6x minus 3 equals negative 5x plus 7. So we want to get the x's to one side and the numbers to the other side. So we're going to add 3 to this side. We're going to add 3 over here. And then we're going to add 5x to both sides. So plus 5x plus 5x. So 6x plus 5x is 11x. The minus 3 and 3 will cancel out. Negative 5x and 5x will cancel out. And 7 plus 3 equals 10. So 11x is equal to 10. And now to solve for x, all we do is divide by 11. So x is equal to 10 over 11. So our answer is going to be B for this question. So let's move on to question number 9. Okay, so here we have question number 9. It says, what two numbers should be placed in the blanks below so that the difference between consecutive numbers is the same? So we have 13, blank, blank, then 34. So this is a sequence, and basically we want to figure out which of these two numbers will be able to be put in here, and every term will differ by the same amount. So I think the easiest way to do this is just trial and error. Now, there are ways to do it without trial and error, but on the ACT test, you can figure this out really, really quickly. So we know that we want the consecutive distance to be the same. So let's look at these and figure out what the distance between the two are. So the distance between 19 and 28 is 9. So that means that the distance between every term should be 9 if this answer works. Well, the first thing we would try to do is plug in 19 and 28. And we see that the difference between 13 and 19 is only 6. So A is out automatically. So now let's look at B. We have 20 and 27. So let's plug them in. So we have the distance between 20 and 27 is 7. So let's look at the distance between everything else. The distance between 13 and 20 is 7. So this is looking good. Now we'll check the distance between 27 and 34, and that is also 7. So it's looking like B is going to be our answer. It's always good to go ahead and check the rest of these, but if you do, you will see that it just gets even worse, and B is going to be the correct answer for this question. So again, trial and error a lot of the times on these tests is a good idea because it'll save you so much time. Trying to figure this out logically is always going to be harder than just plugging it in a case like this. So just see which one works. If it's one of the first two options, you're saving a ton of time. So that's the end of question 9. Let's move on to question number 10. Okay, so here is question number 10. It says if x is a real number such that x cubed equals 729, then x squared plus the square root of x is equal to what? So this question looks really tough at first glance, but in reality it is not. So if we're given x cubed is equal to 729, to solve for x, we just need to take the cube root of both sides. The cube root will cancel with the power in the x, leaving us just x is equal to the cube root of 729, which again looks hard, but if you plug this into your calculator, which you will be allowed to have, you'll figure out that x is equal to 9. The cube root of 729 is 9. So now that we know that x is equal to 9, we're going to plug x in for this. So we're given 9 squared plus the square root of 9 is equal to what? Well, we know 9 squared is 81, and the square root of 9 is 3. So 81 plus 3 is equal to 84, which gives us our answer of D. So that's the answer for this one. Let's move on to question number 11. Okay, so here we have question number 11 of the ACT. It says the formula for the volume V of a sphere with radius r is V equals 4/3 times pi r cubed. If the radius of a baseball is 1 1/3 inches, what is the volume to the nearest inch? So here's your options. Let's go ahead and compute what the radius is in an improper fraction because we have it in a mixed number. So 1 1/3, we want to convert this to a fraction. That way it's easier to plug into the formula. Well, 1 1/3 is the same as 4/3, which is our radius. So we have r, and the rest of the stuff here is just constant. So we can go ahead and plug in. So the volume is equal to 4/3 pi times 4/3 cubed. And what we can do here is these are the same term, so we can make this 4/3 to the fourth in one big term. So we have 4/3 to the power of 4 times pi. Now, when we do a fraction to an exponent, we're going to go ahead and do the exponent for both of them. So we have, this is the same as 4 to the fourth over 3 to the fourth, and then all of that times pi, which is 256 over 81 pi. And this is approximately 9.92, and 9.92 is closest to 10. So it's closest to 10 inches because we're rounding up to the nearest inch. So that's it for question 11. Let's move on to question number 12. Okay, so here we have question 12. It says if a gumball is randomly chosen from a bag that contains exactly 6 yellow gumballs, 5 green gumballs, and 4 red gumballs, what is the probability that the gumball chosen is not green? So to figure this out, we need to figure out what the total number of gumballs in the bag is, and then figure out how many are not green. And when we divide those, that will be our probability. So the total gumballs is 6 plus 5 plus 4. You just add up the amount of all the colors, of course. So 6 plus 5 plus 4 is 15. And we know that we have 5 green gumballs. So we know that we have 10 that are not green. So minus the 5 green, it gives us 10 not green. So now that we have 10 not green, we want to find the probability that you choose one at random and it isn't green. So we know that there are 10 options out of a total 15. And 10 out of 15 right there can simplify to 2/3 if you divide both of the numerator and denominator by 5. So that means that our answer is going to be A, 2/3 is the probability that you pull a gumball that is not green. So let's move on to question 13. Okay, so here we have question number 13. It says the number of students participating in fall sports at a certain high school is given below, along with the average ratio of sports awards per participant. So here's the table right here. We'll look at that in just a second. Now it says, given this table, what is the estimate for the total number of sports awards that the school will get that season? So we have tennis, soccer, cross country, and football are the 4 sports. And these are the number of participants, and these are the average award per participant. So to figure out the total, we want to multiply the total participants by the average awards for every sport and then add them together. So to figure out the total awards, we're going to do 25 times 0.2 plus 30 times 0.5 plus 50 times 0.3 plus 80 times 0.4. So now this will give the average awards for the whole group of tennis players, the average awards for the whole group of soccer, average awards for the whole group of cross country, and the average awards for the total group of football. So let's go ahead and multiply these out. This is going to give us 5 plus 30 times 0.5 is 15 plus 50 times 0.3 is also 15 plus 80 times 0.4 is 32. And when we add all of these together, we get 32 plus 30 is 62 plus 5 is 67 total awards. So the estimate is going to be option D, 67 total awards for fall sports. So that's it for question 13. Let's move on to question 14. Okay, so here's question 14, and we're going to use the same chart and topic for question 15 as well, so we'll leave that up. But it says the following chart shows the current enrollment in all social studies classes at Iron Mountain High School. And so here's the whole table. I'm not going to read through it, but you can see it. And if not, then I have linked this test where I got it in the description below. So I'll be able to, you'll be able to go through and look at this question if you need. But so question 14 says, what is the average number of students enrolled per section in U.S. history? So we have this whole U.S. history tab, and we want to find what is the average number of students enrolled per section. So we have 3 sections here. So to find the average, we're going to have to divide their total by 3. So we have section A plus section B plus section C divided by 3 is equal to their average. So we need to figure out what is the enrollment per section. Well, for section A, we have 25 students. So we have 25 plus, for B, we have 29 plus, for C, we have 24. And then we need to divide this by 3. Well, 25 plus 29 plus 24 is going to be equal to 78 divided by 3. And 78 divided by 3 is equal to 26. So our answer for question 14 is going to be B, 26. So let's go ahead and move on to question number 15. Okay, so here we have question 15. So it uses the same chart, but now it says the school wants all of these students to read the same book at the same time so that the author can come speak at an assembly. They originally purchased 2 sets of 30 books, but now one set is missing 3 and the other is missing 5. Which of the following class periods, if any, are there not enough books available for each student to have a book? So we know that instead of having 30, we have one set that has 27 books and one set that has 25 books. So if we see a number that is bigger than 27, we know that there is no way that we can give them enough books. Also, we need to look at the number of period, or the number of shared periods. So we have 2 sets. So we have period 2 has 2, period 3 has 2, period 4 has 2. So we know that at least one of those has to be less than or equal to 25, and the other one has to be less than or equal to 27. So it puts more of a restriction. So let's look at the ones that only have 1 class per period. So for period 1, we have 23 people enrolled. We know that that's less than either of the 2 sets, so we're good. We have enough books for period 1. For period 6, we have 27, but we know that we can just give them the first set that's missing 3, and we'll have exactly the right amount of books. So now let's look at period 2. Period 2, we have 1 at 24, 1 at 25. Both of these are less than or equal to 25, so we're good. Now let's look at period 3. Well, now we see a problem. Period 3, we have 1 with 29. So we know that we can't possibly give every student a book if we only have 29 enrolled. And the other one is 27, so that narrows it down even more. So 3 is a problem. So we know that our answer now is either going to be B or D, because we know period 3 has to be a problem. Now we just need to look at period 4. We'll see if they both have the problem or if it's just period 3. So period 4, we have 24 and 26. Well, we know 24 is good for even the one that's missing 5, because there's 25 books, we have 24 students, we're good. For period 4 in the government class, we have 26, which we can give the one that's only missing 3, because that has 27 books. So period 4 is good. So this tells us that our answer is going to be B, period 3 only. Those are the only period that is going to have a problem with these sets of missing books. So that's all for question 15. Let's move on to question number 16. All right, so here we have question number 16. It says, what expression must the center cell of the table below contain so that the sum of each row and each column are equivalent? This is a very simple question. So we're saying that the sum of the rows and the sum of the columns, no matter what we do, are always going to be the same. So the sum of this row is the same as the sum of this column, and so on. For any row and column we pick, they're always going to be the same. So that tells us that whatever the sum of this row is right here, which we'll use as an example, whatever the sum is, will be the sum of every row and every column. So let's figure that out. So we have negative 4x plus 7x plus 4x. Well, the negative 4 and the positive 4 will cancel. The sum of each row and column is equal to 7x. So we want to figure out, what do we need to put here so that we get a sum of 7x? Well, let's just do this row as an example. So we know that we need 7x plus, we'll just use a question mark as the variable, minus 3x needs to be equal to 7x. So let's go ahead and just solve for the question mark. Let's solve for what we're missing. So we're going to add 3x over here. So plus 3x plus 3x And then we're going to subtract 7x. Minus 7x minus 7x. So these will cancel, these will cancel. We get question mark is equal to, and these cancel too, is just equal to 3x. So if we put 3x in here, every row or column that we add up is going to be equal to 7x. So we can just check that. Let's just use this column as an example. 9x plus 3x is 12x, minus 5x is 7x. So we know that this works, and our answer is going to be B. 3x should go in the center. That's it for question 16. Let's move on to question number 17. Okay, so here we have question 17 that says point A is to be graphed in a quadrant, not on an axis of the standard xy coordinate plane below. If the x and y coordinate of point A are to have the same signs, then point A must be located in which quadrants? So here is the standard coordinate plane. We have quadrant 1, 2, 3, and 4. So I want to look at what the signs of every coordinate is in these quadrants to figure out what our options are. So, of course, going to the right is going to be the positive direction, and going up is positive, and then going to the left and down is negative. So if we're in the first quadrant right here, we see that we're going to the right here, we're going up, they're both going to be positive coordinates. So they're both positive. So that's an option. Quadrant 1 is an option because they have the same signs. They're both positive. Now in quadrant 2, we have x to the left. So to the left of 0, which means x coordinate is going to be negative, but the y coordinate is positive. So that tells us right there that quadrant 2 is not an option because the signs are different. Now for quadrant 3, we're to the left of the y-axis and below the x-axis, so that means it's going to be negative, negative. Both coordinates are going to be negative, so quadrant 3 is an option. And then for quadrant 4, we're to the right of the y-axis and beneath the x-axis. So that means the x-axis is going to be positive and the y is going to be negative. So 4 is not an option. So this tells us that we're good for 3 and we're good for 1, which means that our answer is going to be E, quadrant 1 or 3 only. That's the only quadrants that point A could be graphed in. So that's it for question 17. Let's move on to 18. Okay, so here we have question number 18. It says Reggie knows how to make 5 different entrees, 4 different side dishes, and 6 different desserts. How many distinct complete meals, each consisting of an entree, a side dish, and a dessert, can Reggie make? So now to figure this out, this is a standard probability question. And this is actually really easy once you know how to do it. The way we find out the total number of dishes, so the total dishes, is going to be to simply multiply the amount of different courses that he can make. So he has 5 different entrees. And we're going to multiply that by the 4 different side dishes. And then we'll multiply that by the 6 different desserts. And that will give us the total. So 5 times 4 is 20 times 6, which is 120. So, of course, it doesn't really, you don't need to explain how this works or why this works. You just need to know that this is how it works. You multiply all the different courses that he can make. That will give you your total of 120. So the answer is D for question 18. Let's move on to question number 19. Okay, so here we have question number 19 that says, at a bottling plant, 10,000 liters of carbonated water are needed to produce 3,000 bottles of soda. How many liters of carbonated water are needed to produce 750 bottles of soda? Now this question, we're going to make a proportion. So we're going to have the top equal to the number of liters of carbonated water. So we know it needs 10,000 to make, on the bottom, the bottles of soda. So 3,000. So 10,000 liters of carbonated water makes 3,000 bottles of soda. So we want that to be equal to the proportion between 750 bottles of soda on the bottom and X liters of carbonated water. So we can do this by cross multiplying. So first what I want to do is simplify these. So 10,000 over 3,000 can be simplified to 10 thirds. And this is equal to X over 750. So now when we solve these, we just cross multiply. So 10 times 750 is 7,500 is equal to the product of 3 and x, so 3 times x. So now to solve for x, of course, we just divide by 3. So when we do that, we get x is equal to 2,500 liters of carbonated water. So our answer for question 19 is going to be C, 2,500 liters. So that's it for this one. Let's move on to question number 20. All right, so here we have question number 20. It says, if a rectangle measures 20 meters by 48 meters, what is the length in meters of the diagonal of the rectangle? So I think it's always helpful to draw your diagram here so you can see exactly what you're working with. So let's draw a rectangle. It's not going to be perfect, but it is a rectangle. So here we have 48 and here we have 20. And we want to find the diagonal. So we want to find what this side length is right here. Now, since we have a rectangle, this is a 90-degree angle. So we know this is a right triangle right here. Half of the rectangle is a right triangle. So to find the diagonal, we can just use the Pythagorean theorem. So that tells us that 20 squared plus 48 squared is equal to x squared. So 20 squared is 400 plus 48 squared is 2,304 is equal to x squared. So x squared is equal to 2,704. Now this isn't the answer because this is the square of the diagonal. We want to find what the diagonal is. So we need to take the square root of both sides. So we don't need the plus minus here only because the length is always going to be a positive number. So we'll never have a negative length. So we can just only use the positive answer. And this, when we take the square root of 2,704, we get x is equal to 52, which is option A. So that will be our answer for question 20. Let's go ahead and move on to question number 21. All right, so here we have question number 21. It says, for all positive integers a, b, and c, which of the following expressions is equal to a divided by c? So we just need to look at all the answers and figure out which properties of division, multiplication, addition, subtraction, which ones apply that we can simplify down to a over c. So of course, we're just going to start with the first option. So we have a times b over c times b. Well, we can actually split this fraction up into a over c times b over b. And b over b, because it's a positive integer, this just becomes 1. So really, all we have left is a over c, which is exactly what we needed. So we already know that our answer is going to be a. But we'll go ahead and look through some of these other ones and figure out why they're wrong. Here we have a times a over c times c. Well, that's just a squared over c squared. That's not going to be right. This one, we have a times c over c times a. And by the commutative property of multiplication, those are the same. So we just have 1. A minus b over c minus b, we can't simplify. The a and b, unless they're, I mean, I guess you could add them, but as they are right now, we don't have a specified number for them. So you could add, subtract whenever you know what they are, but right now we don't know. They just stay as a minus b and c minus b. And same thing for adding. So our only answer here is going to be option a times b over c times b. So let's go ahead and move on to question number 22. Okay, so here we have question number 22. It says, what is the slope-intercept form of 6x minus 2y minus 4 equals 0? So remember, slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b. So m is the slope, b is the y-intercept. That doesn't really matter. We just want to get it into this form. So essentially, we're solving for y here. So the easiest way to do this is just going to be to add 2y on both sides so that we can get 2y on its own. So when we do that, we'll end up with 2y is equal to 6x minus 4. And now to solve for y, we're going to divide everything by 2. So these 2's will cancel. We get y on its own. Y equals 6x over 2 is 3x. Minus 4 over 2 is minus 2. So y equals 3x minus 2, which is option C. So C will be our answer for number 22. Let's move on to question 23. Okay, so here we have question number 23. It says, which of the following is a solution to the equation x squared plus 25x equals 0? So in order to do this, we just want to find what all the solutions are, and of course one of them will be here. So we have, let's just rewrite it, we have x squared plus 25x equals 0. So on the left side, the first thing we want to do is we can factor out an x. So we have x, that'll be x plus 25 equals 0. So now for this whole thing to equal 0, either this x equals 0, so that's one solution, x equals 0, or x plus 25 equals 0. So let's set x plus 25 equal to 0. So if we have x plus 25 equals 0, well, x is equal to negative 25. So our solutions for x are 0 and negative 25. 0 isn't up here, but negative 25 is. So our answer for this question is going to be E. Let's move on to question number 24. Okay, so here we have question number 24. It says, for the right triangle ABC shown below, what is tangent of B? So in this case, we have the triangle ABC, and we're asking for tangent of an angle, and the angle is this big capital B. So we're looking for the tangent of that angle right there. And of course, this is a 90-degree angle. And we're looking for the tangent. So remember, tangent is opposite over adjacent. So the opposite side to B is going to be lowercase c, and the adjacent side to B is going to be A. So tangent of B is equal to c over A. Now it is important to note that B, the lowercase b, is adjacent, but it is also the hypotenuse, and tangent does not use the hypotenuse. So we only worry about the two legs of the triangle, which are A and C. So opposite is C, adjacent we choose to be A. So tangent of B is C over A, which is shown right here in option D. So that's it for question 24. Let's move on to 25. All right, so here's question number 25. It says a chord 8 inches long is 3 inches away from the center of a circle as shown below. What is the radius of the circle to the nearest tenth of an inch? So here's our circle right here, and here's our center right in the middle. So we have this chord right here that is 3 inches away from the center, and the chord is 8 inches long. So what we do know is that because it's directly below the center, this 3, where the 3 is at, the line that is 3 inches, is the direct midpoint of this chord. So we can really divide this up. Instead of 8, we could just say 4 and 4. So now we have a right triangle right here, and we have a radius, which is the hypotenuse. The radius of the circle is the hypotenuse of this triangle. So we can use Pythagorean theorem to figure out what the radius is. So all we need to do is square both of these, add them up, and then take the square root of what we get, and that will give us our radius. So we have 3 squared plus 4 squared is equal to the radius squared. So 9 plus 16 equals r squared. That means r squared is equal to 25. And when we take the square root of both sides, we don't need the plus minus again because it's a distance. It can only be a positive number. So r is equal to 5 exactly. So our answer for this question is going to be option C. So that's it for question 25. Let's move on to question number 26. All right, so here we have question number 26. It says the length L in meters of a spring is given by the equation L equals 2/3 F plus 0.05, where F is the implied force in newtons. Approximately what force in newtons must be applied for the spring's length to be 0.23 meters? So we're given what the final length is, and that's where L is. So we're going to go ahead and just plug that into the equation. So we have 0.23 is equal to, the only thing we don't know is F. So we have 2/3 F plus 0.05. Now to solve for F, we need to get it by itself. So let's subtract both sides by 0.05. So that tells us that 2/3 F is equal to 0.23 minus 0.05 is 0.18. So now to solve for F, we need to multiply both sides of the equation by 3 halves. So when we do that, we get rid of the 2/3. F is on its own, and that is equal to 0.18 times 3 halves, which is 0.27, and that's in newtons. So our answer is going to be E, 0.27 newtons. So that's the end of question 26. Let's move on to 27. Okay, so here's question number 27. It says, after a snowstorm, city workers removed an estimated 12,000 cubic meters of snow from the downtown area. If that snow were spread in an even layer over an empty lot with dimensions 62 meters by 85 meters, about how many meters deep would the snow be? So we have something in cubic meters. Now that tells us it's going to be volume. So we're looking at volume because it's cubic. So we know that the volume of snow is 12,000. So volume equals 12,000 cubic meters. We also know that volume is equal to the length times the width times the height. And the height in this case is the depth, but we're given length, width, and we just need to figure out what the depth is. So we'll just leave it at height for now. So we know that 12,000 is equal to 62 times 85. 62 times 85 times the height. So now to solve for height, all we need to do is just divide by 62 times 85. So we have h is equal to 12,000 divided by 62 times 85, whatever that is. You can plug it into your calculator, and it will give you approximately 2.277 meters. So now that we know we have approximately 2.277, we know that that's between 2 and 3 meters. So our answer for this question is going to be C. So that's it for question 27. Let's move on to 28. Okay, so here we have question number 28. It says the hypotenuse of the right triangle LMN shown below is 22 feet long. The cosine of angle L is 3/4. How many feet long is the segment LM? So we know that cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. So cosine is this length over 22. And we know that that's equal to 3/4. So we'll call this length x, which is the length of the segment. So we know that x over 22 is equal to 3/4. Because cosine is just x over 22, which simplifies to 3/4 in this case. So to solve for this, we can just cross multiply. So we have 4x is equal to 22 times 3, which is 66. So now we can divide everything by 4. So divide this by 4, divide this by 4. These cancel. This right here turns into 16.5. So x is equal to 16.5. So our answer for this question is going to be option B. So that's it for question number 28. Let's move on to 29. Okay, so here we have question number 29. It says the table below shows the number of pounds of apples grown last year in 4 cities. So in the scale, 1 apple is 1,000 pounds of apples grown. According to the table, what fraction of the apples grown in all 4 cities were grown in Appleton? So here's my hand-drawn apples. I realize that they're not great, but this is as good as it's going to get coming from my hand. So we want to go ahead and just convert these into pounds. It's going to make it easier to work with. So for every one of these apples, we have 1,000 pounds. And all these are half apples right here. So we have 4,000 plus half is 4,500 pounds. In Red Falls, we just have 3,000 pounds. In Appleton, we have 2,000 plus 500, which is 2,500 pounds. And then in Shady Acres, we have 2,000 pounds. So across all of them, we have right here 4,500 and 2,500 is going to be equal to 7,000 pounds plus another 5,000, which is 12,000 pounds. So we have 12,000 total pounds. And we're trying to figure out what fraction of the apples were grown in Appleton. So all we need to do is just do 2,500, divide that by 12,000. We can cancel 2 zeros out of these. So this is the same as 25 over 120. And we can divide these by 5. So we can do 5 over 24. And that is the percentage of apples grown in Appleton. So that matches option A, which will be our answer for this question. Let's move on to question number 30. Okay, so here we have question number 30. It says points B and C lie on segment AD as shown below. The length of segment AD is 25 units. Segment AC is 19 units long. And segment BD is 14 units long. How many units long, if it can be determined, is segment BC? So we know that the whole thing is 25 units long. So everything here, this is 25 units. We know that AC is 19. So we know that right here, this is 19 units long. And then we also know that BD is 14. So here to here is 14 units. So we want to figure out how long is BC. The easiest way we can do this is to treat these as 2 separate segments. And then however much their sum differs from this 25 is going to be the answer. So if we just add 19 and 14, when we add 19 and 14, we're going to get 33. So 19 plus 14 is equal to 33. So that means that AC and BD, which cover the entire line, they add up to 33. And the whole line adds up to 25. So when we subtract that, we end up with 8, which that is going to be the distance of segment BC. It's the difference between the sum of the 2 that you're given. So our answer is going to be C, 8 units long. So now we're halfway done. So let's go ahead and move on to question 31. Okay, so here we have question number 31. It says, what is the x-coordinate of the point in the standard xy plane where the lines y equals negative 2x plus 7 and y equals 3x minus 3 intersect? So all we need to do here is realize that if they're intersecting, that means that the lines are equal to each other at that point. So we just need to set these equal to each other and solve for x, and it will give us our x coordinate. So we have negative 2x plus 7 is equal to 3x minus 3. So we can add 2x over here and or add 3 over here, and then we'll be able to cancel terms. So add 2x to both sides, add 3 to both sides, and 3x, well, these will cancel. These will cancel. 3x plus 2x is 5x, is equal to 7 plus 3, which is 10. Divide all these by 5, we get x is equal to 2. So our answer for question 31 is going to be option D. So let's move on to question 32. Okay, so here we have question number 32. It says, for all pairs of real numbers s and t, where s equals 4t minus 7, what is t equal to? So essentially, we're just solving for t. So we have, let's rewrite it, s equals 4t minus 7. To solve for t, we want to isolate it. So let's add 7 to both sides. So that gives us 4t is equal to s plus 7. And now to isolate t, we're going to divide everything by 4. So divide here, divide here. T is equal to s plus 7 over 4. So that matches option E. Now it is important to note and make sure that you know that when you're dividing by 4 on both sides, you have to divide everything by 4, which is why the s plus 7 is all in the numerator. A lot of people would think that it's option B and just divide the s by 4, but remember the 7 has to be divided by 4 as well, so that's why it is option E. So let's move on to question number 33. All right, so here's question 33. It says parallelogram ABCD with dimensions in inches is shown in the diagram below. What is the area of the parallelogram in square inches? So here we have the parallelogram, and we know that we're given all of these measurements. They're all in inches, but of course that doesn't really matter for the calculation. So remember that the area of a parallelogram, so A is equal to base times height. So the area of any parallelogram is the base times the height. So right here, we're given the base. We have 5 and 15, and we know that these add together to be 20. So our base is going to be 20, multiplied by the height, which we're also given. Our height is 12. So 20 times 12 is equal to 240, and that is inches squared. So that means that our answer is going to be D for this question. So this question looks a lot harder than it is, but it's really just knowing the formula of the area of a parallelogram is just base times height, and then using the information you're given. That's it for number 33. Let's move on to 34. All right, so here we have question 34. It says, if b equals a plus 3, then the quantity a minus b, all to the fourth power, is equal to what? Well, we're given b equals a plus 3. So this is an equation that has a and b. So let's try to form a minus b from this equation. Well, we see here, if we subtract b to this side, we'll end up with 0 is equal to a minus b plus 3. And then to get a minus b on its own, let's just subtract 3 from both sides. So now we have negative 3 is equal to a minus b. So now we have a minus b. We know it's equal to negative 3. So if we're looking for a minus b to the fourth, that's the same as negative 3 to the fourth. And negative 3 to the fourth, even if you don't know what this is, you can plug it into your calculator. It gives you 81, which is option A. So now one thing I do want to note with this question is I talked about earlier in the test at looking at the answers and seeing which ones are obviously wrong. Well, here's a really nice trick for this one to rule out 3 answers immediately. We have something to the fourth power. Anything to the fourth power is always going to be positive. If you put in a negative number, you see we get a positive. And if you put in a positive number, you're still going to come out with a positive number. C, D, and E are all negative. So they can't even be considered as options because you will never get a negative number if you raise a number to the fourth power. So that's just a cool trick to just get rid of 3 options immediately. And if you have to guess, well, now you have it down to 2 answers. So let's move on to question number 35. All right, so here we have question number 35. It says a park has the shape and dimensions in miles given below. The park office is located halfway between points A and D. Which of the following is the location of the park office to point A? So here's the diagram here. We have north, east, south, and west, standard coordinate system. And we want to find the park office, which we know is halfway between points A and D. So we know that it's going to be halfway on this line. So it's going to be somewhere around here. And we want to figure out how we can get there from point A. Well, we don't even need to worry about this section of the graph. It doesn't matter. This section is just completely useless to us right now. All we need to worry about is also this section. We don't even need to worry about. We just need to worry about this square and finding the middle between A and D. So let's figure out how far we have to go. Well, to get to it on the horizontal axis, on the east-west axis, we know that this whole distance right here between A and D right here is 9 miles long. So to get halfway, we need 4.5 miles east. So starting from A, we need to go 4.5 miles east. That'll put us here. And then now we want to get halfway between A and D on the vertical axis. And we see that that distance is 8 miles. So halfway would be 4. So we have 4.5 east, and then we have 4 south. So when we look at our answer choices, the only one that works is option B. So that will be our answer for question number 35. So let's go ahead and move on to 36. All right, so here we have question 36. It says the larger of two numbers exceeds 3 times the smaller number by 4. The sum of twice the larger number and 4 times the smaller number is 58. If x is the smaller number, which equation below determines the correct value of x? So this is really complicated looking, but whenever you actually realize what it's asking you for and how we can make this in terms of just x, it's a lot easier. So let's start out with noticing that the x is the value of the smaller number. So we have small is x. And it says that the larger of two numbers is 4 larger than 3 times the smaller number. So the large number is the same as 3 times the smaller number plus 4. That is 3x plus 4. So now it says the sum of twice the larger number and 4 times the smaller number is 58. So we know that it says twice the larger number. So 2 times this. So we have 2 times 3x plus 4. And then we're adding that with 4 times the smaller number. So plus 4, which is just multiplied by x because that's the small number. And that's equal to 58. So, I mean, that's what it's asking us for. And if we look, that is exactly the same as option D, which is going to be our answer. So you see that this question looks really tough, and reading it how it is makes it a lot more confusing. But when you just realize that you can express the small and the large number as expressions, it makes this so much easier. That's it for question 36. Let's move on to 37. All right, so here we have question number 37. It says members of the fire department lean a 26-foot ladder against a building. The side of the building is perpendicular to level ground, and the base of the ladder is 10 feet from the base of the building. So the nearest foot, how far up the building does the ladder reach? So for a question like this, I think that the best thing to do is always just to draw a diagram. So we're going to draw the ground right here. This will be the building, and then we will put the ladder down like this. So this is our building, then the ground and the ladder. And we know the ladder is 26 feet long, and we know that the base of the ladder to the base of the building is 10 feet. So we want to figure out how far up the building it goes, which we'll just call that x for now. And since we know that it says right here, the side of the building is perpendicular to level ground, that means this is a right angle, which means we have a right triangle here. So we can solve for x by using the Pythagorean theorem. So we know that 10 squared plus x squared is equal to 26 squared. So to solve for x squared, we need to do x squared equals 26 squared minus 10 squared. So this, whenever we do this in our calculator, or we can multiply it and subtract it by hand, we get x squared is equal to 576. And then to solve for x, we take the square root of both sides. And remember, we only need the positive number because this can only be a positive distance. X is equal to 24. And 24 is the square root of 576. That means our answer is going to be E for this question. And we're done, so we can go ahead and move on to question 38. All right, so here we have question number 38. It says a square is circumscribed about a circle of 5-foot radius, as shown below. What is the area of the square in square feet? So here's the diagram of what we have. It's not a perfect square. I mean, you can see it squiggles, but again, by hand, this is tough to draw. but we want to figure out what is the area of the square. So we know if a square is circumscribed about a circle, that means that this distance right here is the same in the circle and the square because they're touching at point to point. So we know the diameter of the circle is the same as the side length of a square. So if we have the radius that we know is equal to 5, then the diameter is equal to 10. So when we extend this out over here, this is another 5. Those are 10. So that means that the side of one side of the square is 10. And now since a square has all the same length sides, we know that the area is equal to 10 squared, which is 100. And that's going to be our answer. So that's option B for this question, and we are done. So let's go ahead and move on to 39. Okay, so this is question number 39. It says the ratio of the side lengths for a triangle is exactly 7 to 11 to 13. In a second triangle, similar to the first, the shortest side is 9 inches long. To the nearest tenth of an inch, what is the length of the longest side of the second triangle? So to this question, because we have this ratio, it makes it a lot easier. What this means is we're only going to worry about the 7 and the 13. So the ratio of the smallest to the largest is 7 to 13. Which means if we have the smallest side, which we're going to just call x, x is the smallest side, the longest side is going to be equal to 13 over 7 multiplied by x. And that's just because of the proportion between them. So we know that to find the longest side, if we set x equal to 9, as in the second triangle, 13 over 7 multiplied by 9 is equal to 121 over 7, which is approximately 16.714. So now that we know that since it's approximately 16.71, it wants us to round to the nearest tenth of an inch, and the nearest tenth of an inch is 16.7. So our answer for question 39 is going to be C. So that's it for that one. Let's go ahead and move on to 40. All right, so here we have question number 40. It says, in the figure below, ABCD is a trapezoid. E lies on line AD, and angle measures are marked. What is the measure of angle CDB? So we're looking for the measure of CDB, so we're looking for this angle right here. So here's what we do know. We know that this is a trapezoid, and we know that this whole line is all solid together. And we know that BC is parallel to this line, and that's because it is a trapezoid, so it necessarily has to be. If this is a trapezoid, BC and AD will be parallel. Because of that, we can already figure out what this angle is right here. Because these are parallel lines, this angle is equal to this angle. So this angle is also 25 degrees. Which makes our question a lot easier because we know that the total angle of this line right here has to be 180 degrees. So we're missing this angle, and we know that these three have to add up to 180. So we know that 100 plus x plus 25 has to equal 180. So 125 plus x equals 180. And when we subtract 125, we get x is equal to 55. So our answer is going to be C. 55 degrees is the measure of angle CDB. So that's it for question 40. Let's move on to question number 41. All right, so here we have question number 41. It says in the figure below, each angle is a right angle, and the lengths are given in inches. What is the perimeter in inches of the figure? So we're going to use the information that we have to figure this out. So we know that first we're going to look at what sides we're even missing. So we're missing x, we'll call this x here, we're missing y here, and we're missing z here. Those are the three side lengths that we're missing to find the perimeter. So let's try to figure them out. First, we're going to use this big long distance as 14 right here. Well, we know that this distance here is the same as this distance down here. So every one of these horizontal segments will add up to 14. So that tells us that 2 plus z plus 4 plus 4 needs to equal 14. And when you solve for z, you'll end up with z equals 4. So we're going to replace this with a 4 right here. Now to figure out x and y, we don't even need to do any actual arithmetic to figure this out, because we know that the distance from the top to the bottom here is going to be the same if you're on this side or if you're on this side. So we know that x and y are the only two vertical components. So we can say x plus y is equal to 5 plus 4 plus 3. That's going to be the same distance. And 5 plus 4 plus 3 is going to be equal to 12. So the vertical distance on this side is 12, and the vertical distance on this side is 12. So we have to find the perimeter, 12 plus 12 plus the 14 is part of this, plus the 14 that we found for these distances right here. So we know that this is 2 plus 4 plus 4 plus 4 is going to be equal to 14. And when you add all of these up, you get 52 inches, which is option D in this question. So that's it for 41. Let's go ahead and move on to 42. All right, so here we have question number 42. It says, of the 517 graduating seniors at Brighton High School, approximately 4/5 will be attending college, and about 1/2 of those going to college will be attending a state college. What is the closest estimate of the total number of graduating seniors who will be attending a state college? So this question, there's two ways we can go about it. The first way is more computational. So we could do 4/5 of the 517, and then whatever we get, multiply that by 1/2, and it will give us an estimate. The way I'm going to do it is go ahead and multiply these fractions first, and then multiply that to the 517. So we know that 4/5 of the students will be attending college in general, and 1/2 of those going to college will be at a state college. So we're going to multiply that by 1/2. And multiplying fractions, of course, is easy. We just multiply straight across. So this is 4 over 10, which is the same as 2 over 5th. 2/5, sorry. So then we're going to use 2/5, and we're going to multiply that by 517. And when we do that, we'll get a number that's right around 200. So our answer is going to be B, 200, because it is the best estimate of the number of graduating seniors attending a state college. So that's it for 42. Let's move on to 43. Okay, so here we have question number 43. It says, let x square circle y equal the quantity x minus 2y squared for all integers x and y. Which of the following is the value of 5 square circle negative 3? Now, of course, square circle is not an operation that we teach because it's not a real operation. What they're testing here is the fact that you know how to use a definition when it's given to you. So this is an operation we don't use, but they've created, and so now we're going to apply it. And now you might be confused when you first see this, but this is literally as simple as plugging in the numbers. So 5 square circle negative 3 is equal to, well, we have our definition. We have x minus 2y squared. So in this case, our x is 5, so we have 5 minus 2 times our y, which is negative 3. And that's going to be squared. So we can simplify this to be 5 plus 6 squared, which is 11 squared, which is 121. So our answer for this question is going to be option A. So that's it for question 43. Let's move on to 44. Okay, so here we have question number 44. It says if 125% of a number is 425, what is 65% of the number? Now this question, we just need to convert these percentages into a decimal. And to do that, we just divide by 100. So 125% divided by 100 is going to be equal to 1.25. Same thing with 65%. So 65 over 100 is equal to 0.65. Now we're going to use this because when we're working with these operations, we want to go ahead and break them into their decimal form. So we know that 125% of a number is 425. So we have 1.25. So 1.25 multiplied by some number is equal to 425. So to solve for the number, we just need to divide by 1.25. So x is equal to 425 divided by 1.25, which is equal to 340. So we know that our original number is 340, but that's not our answer. We're looking for 65% of the number. So to find 65% of the number, we just multiply the decimal form, 0.65, times the number. So we have 0.65 multiplied by 340, and this will give us 221. So our answer choice for option 44 is going to be A. So that's it for number 44. Let's move on to 45. All right, so here we have question number 45. It says, what is the distance in the standard xy coordinate plane between the points 2, 3, and 5, 5? So now this question is really testing your knowledge of formulas. So we have a formula for the distance between 2 points. And it's a pretty complicated one, but the distance between 2 points is equal to the square root of x2 minus x1 squared plus the quantity y2 minus y1 squared, where this is x1, y1, and this is x2, y2. So let's just go ahead and plug into our formula. So the distance is equal to the square root of x2 minus x1. So that's 5 minus 2 squared plus y2 minus y1 is going to be 5 minus 3 squared. So now we can simplify this, which is going to be the square root of 5 minus 2 squared is 3 squared, plus 5 minus 3 is 2 squared, which is the square root of 9 plus 4, which is the square root of 13. And the square root of 13 cannot be simplified anymore, so our answer is going to be option D. So that's it for question 45. Let's move on to 46. All right, so here we have question number 46. It says the ratio of the radii of two circles is 9 to 16. What is the ratio of their circumferences? Now this question is super easy if you see what's actually going on here. So we know that the circumference of a circle, we'll call it C, is equal to 2 pi times the radius. So for when we're looking at the circumference of these circles, so the circumference of the smaller one is equal to 2 pi times 9. And the circumference of the larger one is 2 pi times 16. Now, we don't have to do any math to realize that these are being increased by the same factor of 2 pi. So the ratio between them will not change because the ratio is the difference in the length of the radii. So the difference in the length of the circumference will not change because they're being increased by the same factor. So the ratio doesn't change. We're going to stick with the original 9 to 16, which is option B. So that's it for 46. Let's move on to 47. All right, so here we have question number 47. It says a circle in the xy coordinate plane is tangent to the x-axis at 4 and tangent to the y-axis at 4. Which of the following is an equation of the circle? Well, first let's remember what the equation of a circle is. So we are going to write that down. We have the quantity x minus h squared plus the quantity y minus k squared equals the radius squared, where the point HK is the center of the circle and R equals the radius. So this is the equation of the circle. So let's draw it out in the standard XY coordinate plane. So we're going to draw it like this. We're only going to be looking at the positive first quadrant. So this is the y-axis and this is the x-axis. And here is x equals 4 and here is y equals 4. So when it says that the circle is tangent to the x-axis at 4 and tangent to the y-axis at 4, this word tangent means it's the only time that this circle will touch the x and y axis. So if that's the case, it's the only time it can touch it. That means everything has to stay above and to the right of the x and y axis. So the circle will look like this. That's a little bit of a wonky circle, but you get the idea. And the center will be right here. So we know that the center is going to be 4, 4 because when you see it lines up perfectly, so h comma k is the center is equal to 4 comma 4. Now we just need to look at the radius. Well, we know that it touches at 4, 0. So that means that it goes from 4, 0 to 4, 4. That's an increase of 4 units. The radius is equal to 4. So now that we know that, and since the radius is the same everywhere, this will never change. All we need to do is check one of these points. So since the radius is equal to 4, we can use all this information to plug into our equation. So we have x minus h squared will be x minus 4 squared. Y minus k squared is y minus 4 squared. And the radius squared is 4 squared, which is 16. And the one that matches that is option D. So this is how we can find the equation of the circle tangent to the x and y axis. That's it for number 47. Let's move on to 48. All right, so here we have question number 48. It says, using the complex number I, where I squared equals -1, 2 over the quantity 1 minus I multiplied by the quantity 1 plus I over the quantity 1 plus I is equal to what? So this is just a simple case of multiplying two fractions. Now, using the complex number I does complicate things a little bit, but we'll see how we can work with that. So let's start just by rewriting and multiplying. So we have 2 over the quantity 1 minus I multiplied by 1 plus I over the quantity 1 plus I. So first let's just multiply the numerators. So we have 2 times the quantity 1 plus I. And in the denominator, we're going to need to use the FOIL method or the distributive property, either way you want to do it, to multiply these out. So 1 minus I times 1 plus I is equal to, well, we're going to start by multiplying 1 times 1, which is 1. Now we have plus I, then we have minus I, then we have minus I squared. Well, the plus I minus I will cancel, so we end up with 1 minus I squared. But remember that I squared is -1. So we have 1 minus -1, minus a negative is positive, so this is going to be equal to +2. So the denominator becomes a +2. Now we can factor the 2 out of the numerator and denominator and then divide them out. So then we're left with 1 plus I over 1, which is just 1 plus I. So that means that our answer for question 48 is going to be option A. Let's move on to question number 49. All right, so here we have question number 49. It says, which of the following describes the total number of dots in the first n rows of the triangular arrangement below? So these are all formulas, and we're trying to figure out the total number of dots in the first number of rows. So if we set n equal to 2, well, then we're talking about the total number of dots in this one and in the row before it. So it's going to be 6 if n is 2. If n is 1, it's going to be 2 because there's only 2 dots. So n is 2 is 6, and then we're going to keep adding on for every row after that. So for one of these to be the equation for that, the expression for that, we want to make sure it works for everything. So let's go ahead and just start trying to eliminate some options. Well, if we set n equal to 1, let's see what we have. So n equals 1. Well, we know that a is already out of the equation because the first row, the sum is 2, and it's not 30. So that does not work. A is out. For b, 2 times n is 2 times 1 is 2. So for right now, b is okay. We can't eliminate that just yet. For c, we have n squared. Well, 1 squared is 1, and we have 2 dots here. So c is already wrong. For d, we have 1 times n plus 1, which is 2. So 1 times 2 is 2, so we're good here. And then for e, we have 2 times 1 is 2, plus 2 times n minus 1, that's going to be 0. So 2 plus 0 is 2. E is good for now. Now let's move on to the second one. Well, we have b, if we're setting n equal to 2 now, because we're in the second row, we have b is equal to 2n. Well, 2 times 2 is 4, which is the number in the row in the second row, I'm sorry. But it is not the total number. We didn't include those. So b is now out. Remember, we're looking for 6. We're not looking for 4 because we're adding all these together. For d, we have n times the quantity n plus 1. So I'm going to go ahead and write this one down. We have 2 times 2 plus 1 is equal to 2 times 3 is 6. So we know we have that one right. Now let's look at E. We have 2 times 2 plus 2 times n minus 1, which is 2 minus 1. This is going to be 4 plus 2, which is 6. So right now these are good too. So now we want to move on to 3. So now we have these 6 plus another 6. We're looking for 12 now. So let's do that. Well, now we have D and E. We need to figure out which one's right. So we have D, we're going to use n equals 3. So 3 times 3 plus 1 is equal to 3 times 4, which is 12. So now let's do the option E. 2 times 3 plus 2 times 3 minus 1. This one is equal to 2 times 3 is 6 plus 2 times 2 is 4, which is 10, which is not what we're looking for. So E is out. That means that D is going to be the only one left, so it's going to be our answer. So now this one is a pretty long question, but whenever you just use trial and error and just figure out which ones don't work, you'll be able to answer this one pretty quickly. So that's it for number 49. Let's move on to 50. All right, so here we have question number 50. It says, after polling a class of 24 students by a show of hands, you find that 9 students play soccer and 21 students play basketball. Using this, how many students play both soccer and basketball? So we know that the class has 24 students, and in the poll, we find 9 that play soccer and 21 that plays basketball. Well, we see the problem here. We have 9 plus 21 is the total number of students who answered. Well, that's going to be 30. 30 students is more than 24. So that means some of those students must play both of them. So to figure out how many, well, it's really as simple as just subtracting it with the number of students in the class. So 30 minus 24 is 6. So our answer is going to be D, which makes sense because that would mean that 6 people would have had to have voted twice, which is why there's a difference of 6 votes. So that's it for question 50. Let's move on to question number 51. All right, so now we're on to the final 10 questions. Here is number 51. It says, which of the following is the set of all real numbers x, such that x plus 2 is greater than x plus 5? Now, you might look at this and think, oh, well, let's try to, plug in random values because it's saying only 0. Well, we plug in 0, we get 2 is greater than 5. We know that's not true. And we could just go on plugging in all of these equations, but we could also try to solve for x. So let's do that. If we have x plus 2 is greater than x plus 5, we want to solve for x. So we want to get all of the x's on one side and all of the numbers on the other. Well, we see that when we subtract x over and subtract 2 over, we get 0 is greater than 3. And 0 is greater than 3 is never true. It doesn't matter what value of x you plug in because 0 will never be greater than 3. So the answer is going to be E. And another way we can look at this too is in the form of lines. Here's the xy plane. If we have the line x plus 2, it would be graphed something like this. If we have the graph x plus 5, we're going to start up here at the y-intercept, and it's going to look something like this. And these are parallel lines. They will never touch. Although my graph is a little messed up, they are actually parallel. They have the same slope. They'll never touch. So this one can never be greater than what this one is. So our answer for number 51 is going to be E, and we can move on to question number 52. All right, so here we have question number 52. It says pentagons have 5 diagonals, as illustrated below. How many diagonals does the heptagon, which is 7 sides, have? So when we look at the pentagon, we see that its diagonals, it has 2 coming from every corner. So it keeps going like that, but we only use 5. So if it had 2 coming from every corner, then we would have 10 lines. But because some of those lines are shared, we only have 5 diagonals. We're going to do a similar idea with the heptagon here. So we see that with the heptagon, we actually have 4 diagonals that come out of every corner. So we have this one, this one, this one, and this one that come out. I know this is kind of a wonky shape, but it's hard to draw a heptagon. So we have 4 that come out of every corner. And we know that using the same pattern with the pentagon, we know that it's going to share half of those with other corners. So if we draw all 4 diagonals for every single corner, eventually we will start running into the same lines. And so that means that we're going to, in the same way that we had 10 lines, but we had to divide by 2 to get 5 diagonals. Well, in this case, because we have 4 for every corner, we're going to have 28 total lines, but we divide by half or divide by 2 because half of them are going to be shared, and we'll end up with 14. So that means that a heptagon is going to have C 14 diagonals. So that's it for question 52. Let's move on to 53. All right, so here we have question number 53. It says, John wants to draw a circle graph showing his friends' favorite ice cream flavors. When he asked his friends for their favorite flavors, 35% said chocolate, 20% said vanilla, 15% said strawberry, 25% said mint chocolate chip, and 5% gave other flavors not previously listed. What will be the degree measure of the vanilla sector of the circle graph? Well, now this is a really long word problem that is a really easy question. We know that a circle is 360 degrees. So the interior angle will add up to 360 degrees. And we know that 20% of the 20% of the entire circle will be the vanilla section because 20% said vanilla. So 20% is equal to 0.2. And we just need to multiply that by 360 degrees. So 0.2 times 360 degrees is going to be equal to 72 degrees. So our answer is going to be D. So this is an example of a question that gives you a lot more information than you need. And it makes the question look a lot more complicated, but it's not. All we need to worry about is what percentage said vanilla and just knowing that the total degree angle of a circle is 360 degrees. So that's it for 53. Let's move on to 54. All right, so here we have question number 54. It says if sine theta is equal to 4/5 and pi over 2 is less than theta is less than pi, then tangent of theta is equal to what? Well, this right here is just telling us that the angle it falls somewhere between pi over 2 and pi. So let's just go ahead and draw what that means. So we know that this is pi over 2, this is pi, this is 3 pi over 2, and this is 0. But that doesn't really matter. These parts don't really matter. We're just worried about right here. We know that this angle comes in somewhere in the second quadrant right here. The angle will fall there. Now remember that sine is opposite over the hypotenuse. And when we're working with coordinates, that's going to be, so sine of theta is going to be equal to the y value over the hypotenuse. So tangent of theta is always equal to y over x. So we need to figure out what the x value is. We have the hypotenuse, which is going to be 5. We have the y value, which is 4, because that's what sine of theta is. We just need to figure out what the x value is. And to do that, we can use the Pythagorean theorem. Remember that if we have x squared, which is what we're looking for, plus 4 squared is equal to 5 squared, when we solve this out, we'll get x is equal to 3. Now what we need to realize, though, is since we're in the second quadrant, the x is actually going to be a negative 3. So when we use this, we're going to have x as negative 3 because in the second quadrant, x is always negative. So if x is negative 3, tangent of theta is y over x. That means that tangent of theta is equal to 4, which is the y, over negative 3, which is equal to negative 4/3. And that matches option B for this question. So that's it for number 54. Let's move on to 55. All right, here we have question number 55. It says, which of the following systems of inequalities is represented by the shaded region of the graph? So the shaded region is right here in this little sector of the graph. And so we want to figure out essentially what is the equation of the line. Well, we see of both of these lines, we see that in every answer option we have y equals x plus 1. And that's going to be this one, y equals x plus 1. That's going to be the shaded sector. And we see that in every one of these it is less than or equal to, which is true. Every value in this is less than or equal to x plus 1. Now, this equation of the line is a little harder to figure out. We need to figure out if it's x minus 3 or if it's negative 3 halves x minus 3. Well, we know that if it was x minus 3, it would have a slope of positive 1, which it does not. It never has a slope that is positive. So we know that it has to be negative 3 halves x minus 3. That's the only other option in our answer choices. We also know that it can't be or, because it has to be and the reason for that is because we know it's already less than, but it also has to be greater than this line right here. So it has to be and. It can't be anything with or. So that means that our options are down to D and E. And the way to figure this out is we look at where on the graph is it. We see that this is the line negative 3 halves x minus 3. Is it above or below that line? And we see that the shaded section is always above that line. So y is greater than or equal to the line, which means that our answer is going to be E. And just to double check, we'll make sure that that works. We say that y is less than or equal to x plus 1. That is true. It's always below it. And y is always greater than or equal to negative 3 halves x minus 3, which is this line. And we see every time y is greater than that. So our answer is going to be E, and that's it for question number 55. Let's move on to 56. All right, here we have question number 56. It says if f of x equals 2x squared plus 3, what is f of x plus h? Now remember, when we have f of x, that tells us that our variable that we're working with is just going to be an x. But if we have f of x plus h, we're going to replace that variable with the quantity x plus h. So f of x plus h is going to be equal to 2 times x plus h, the quantity squared, plus 3. So we have 2 times, when we FOIL, I guess we can write it like this, x plus h times x plus h, and then plus 3, which is equal to 2 times, FOILing this, we get x squared plus 2xh plus h squared. You do that by FOILing, so first and then outer, inner, last. And then we still have this plus 3 on the outside. Now when we distribute the 2 to everything, we get 2x squared plus 4xh plus 2h squared, and then the plus 3 will stay the same. And that's as simple as you can have it, so our answer is going to be E. So again, this is just a question of inputs and then just plugging in, knowing how to FOIL binomials, and that's all you need to do for this question. It's really not that tough. That's it for question 56. Let's move on to 57. All right, so here we have question number 57. It says, which of the following is the graph in the standard xy coordinate plane of y equals x squared plus 3x all over x? So you're looking at this and you probably have no idea how you're going to graph it, right? Because you see a quadratic equation in the numerator and you see a linear thing in the denominator, and you would need to divide, and it looks really complex. But we're going to manipulate this a little bit. So we have y equals x squared plus 3x all over x. What we're going to do is we're going to factor out an x from the numerator. So we have x times x plus 3, and that's over x. Now what we're going to do is we're going to cancel these x's out of the numerator and denominator. But we need to be careful because we are losing x equals 0 when we do this. Because if x is equal to 0, then this whole thing becomes 0 over 0 and it's undefined. So we need to remember that, but we are going to cancel out x's right now. So we're going to say that y looks like the graph of x plus 3. And we know what the graph of x plus 3 looks like. It's just a line that crosses through the point 0, 3. So it's a straight diagonal line with slope 1 that crosses through 3. And the only one of these graphs that look like that is going to be option D. Now again, when we're actually graphing this, it's important to know that this point at 0, 3, since x is equal to 0, there will be a hole in the graph at this point. So we'll see a hole right here at 0, 3 because it is undefined right there. But essentially, it's looking like x plus 3 just with that hole. So this would be how you would graph it. So that's the end of question 57. Let's move on to number 58. All right, so here we have question number 58. It says a triangle ABD, is reflected across the y-axis to have the image triangle A prime, B prime, D prime in the xy coordinate plane. Thus, A reflects to A prime. The coordinates of point A are m, n. What are the coordinates of point A prime? Well, first, let's look at what we're doing here. So here's the xy coordinate plane, and we have a triangle here, and we'll just call this A, B, D. And we know that we want to reflect across the y-axis. This is the y-axis. So we're reflecting like a mirror, and we're going to end up with the point A prime right here, and then we're going to end up with B prime over here, and this right here will be D prime. This is our reflected triangle. So we see that the y value of all these points do not change. The y values stay the same. The only thing that changes is where they are in relation to the x coordinate. So the x coordinate goes from positive to negative in this case. Or if it was on this side starting out, it would go from negative to positive. But essentially, the x value flips its sign. So if A was originally at the point MN, the only thing that's changing is the x coordinate, and the x coordinate becomes negative. So the M will be negative and the N will be unchanged. And the only one that matches that is option A, negative M, N. That will be the coordinate of point A prime. So that's it for number 58. Let's move on to 59. All right, here we have question number 59. It says if x is equal to 3r minus 4 and y is equal to 3r plus 2, which of the following expresses y in terms of x? So when we say y in terms of x, that means that we want y to be equal to something that only has x and any other constants. We don't want to see an r. we don't want to set y equal to anything in terms of r. So in this case, we have x in terms of r, and we have y in terms of r. So we want to be able to plug in something for this r that is only in terms of x. So to do that, we want to solve for r in this equation. So if we have x is equal to 3r minus 4, then we know that x plus 4 is equal to 3r. And to solve for r, we get r is equal to 1/3 x plus 4/3, because we have to divide everything by 3. So now let's plug this into this term for y for r, because when we do that, we will be able to only have it in terms of x. So we have y is equal to 3 times this whole thing for r. So 1/3 x plus 4/3. And then we still have the plus 2. So now we can distribute this 3 to everything. So we have y is equal to 3 times 1/3 x is just going to be x, plus 3 times 4 over 3 is going to just be equal to 4, because the 3's will cancel. And then we still have the plus 2, which this just turns into x plus 6. So y is equal to x plus 6, and that means that our answer is going to be option B. And of course, this is y only in terms of x. There is no r, so we got the right answer. All right, well, that's it for number 59. Let's move on to the last question, question number 60. All right, so here's the last question of this Math ACT section. It says, what is cosine of pi over 12, given that pi over 12 is equal to pi over 3 minus pi over 4, and that cosine of alpha minus beta is equal to cosine of alpha times cosine of beta plus sine of alpha times sine of beta? Now, the best part about this is that the ACT gives you the table of these values, and it also gives you the formula. So we can figure this out really quickly. So if we know that we're looking for cosine of pi over 12, so cosine of pi over 12 is equal to cosine of pi over 3 minus pi over 4. And now we have a formula for, this is going to be our alpha, this is going to be our beta. We'll plug in here. So we know that this right here is equal to, we'll move down here, we have cosine of alpha, so cosine of pi over 3. Well, here's pi over 3, here's cosine. Cosine of pi over 3 is 1/2. We have 1/2 multiplied by the cosine of pi over 4. Well, cosine is here, pi over 4 is here, it's root 2 over 2, so square root of 2 over 2. And we're going to add that with the sine of alpha, so sine is here. Remember, alpha is pi over 3, so that's root 3 over 2. And we're going to multiply that with sine of beta. And remember that beta is pi over 4, sine of beta is square root of 2 over 2. So now we're going to multiply and add these fractions, and we will be done. So we just multiply straight across, so the top is going to be root 2 over 2 times 2, which is 4. We're going to add that to root 3 times root 2, which is root 6, because we can multiply like that with square roots, over 2 times 2, which is 4. Now, since these have common denominators, we can just go ahead and break them in, or put them together, and we end up with root 2 plus root 6 all over 4. And that will be our answer, and we see that we have that with option C. Even though the root 6 and root 2 are flipped, that doesn't matter because it's addition, so it doesn't matter what order they come in. So that is going to be it for question number 60. All right, well, that's it. I mean, that's the end of the ACT test. We did all 60 questions in a very long time. I'm sure if you've watched the video up to this point, you definitely will understand that. I know it's a long video. I just wanted to make sure that I could cover every question as thoroughly as possible. And also, some of the diagrams I know were tough to understand, but they're also tough to hand draw. So, of course, I do have where I got the test linked in the description below. But I just wanted to thank you all so much for 1,000 subscribers. That's what this video was made for. I know that the ACT is such a big topic whenever you're in high school, and it's just so important and it's so stressful. So if this even raised your score by a point, then I will be beyond measure happy. Of course, if you all have any questions about what I went over, then again, feel free to ask me. But this was only for your guys' support. I wanted to put in the effort for you all. I can't thank you all enough for everything. So this, I think, will be my last long video of 2023. So I hope you all have a great end of the year. I hope that everything goes well when school starts back up here in a little bit. And yeah, again, I can't thank you all enough for all the support and for everything that you all have given me these last couple months. So I hope you all enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, like I said, just let me know. But if not, then I will see you in the next video. Thank you so much for watching and for all your support.